Hey, what's going on, traders? Happy Wednesday. Thank you guys so much for tuning back into the channel today. I hope you guys have all been having an amazing day, and as usual, I'm going to go ahead and let you guys know exactly how my trading went. So let's get right into today's recap. And as you guys can see from the screen, right, in terms of what I was actively day trading, it was only SQQQ and TQQQ as usual, right? The others are just my swing trades, as you guys know. And so I made $64 on SQQQ, $37 on TQQQ, right? So I made my $100 for the day using $10,000, so I hit my 1% daily goal. But compared to yesterday, right, what you guys will notice is that I took a lot more trades and I was trading for a lot longer, right? So as you guys can see, I started trading right at market open at 6:30, right? And I didn't stop trading until 8:08. So I traded for about an hour and 40 minutes today to hit my goal. But as you guys know, yesterday it only took me 10 minutes, right? So it just goes to show that every single day is different in the market, and you can't necessarily expect to make the same amount within the same amount of time every single day, right? That's just not how the market works, and we just need to take it day by day. But in terms of what I was actually looking at, so we're looking at the NASDAQ future on the 1-day 1-minute chart. And so what I noticed is that during the pre-market session, this thing was consolidating and trading sideways for the most part, right? It would just pretty much push up to the top VWAP, become overextended, consolidate, then start to sell off, right? Once it would sell off, it would form a support, consolidate, then start to change direction, push up, right? And as it ended up pushing up and approaching the top VWAP, again, it peaked out, started to sell off. And so what ended up happening right at market open? Well, what you guys will notice is we saw this candlestick push up and then start to sell off, right? So once I saw this thing start to sell off, I got into SQQQ and was adding in, but we ultimately on this next candlestick saw this thing pop. So I had to cut my trade there, right? And I got into TQQQ. But what ended up happening? Once it started to push up, right, we had this huge sell-off, right? So this thing ended up falling all the way down here. I ended up cutting my loss, once it broke below the bottom VWAP here. So I didn't necessarily ride it all the way down. But I decided to cool off a bit there and, take a step back and wait for true direction to form. And so once I saw this thing start to break above the EMA, the middle VWAP, right, without, much resistance, that's what pretty much gave me a good indication that this thing was going to start to run in a certain direction, right, or uptrend. And so as it broke above the SMA and this new candlestick formed, once this thing pulled on back but started to ultimately form another green candlestick, right, that's when I ended up buying back into TQQQ, and I would just be averaging up, right? So, and I would just be constantly doing that. So I would average up, cut my position, majority of it as it approached the resistance level, right, or the top VWAP, and then I would wait for the next candlestick to see what happens. Is this next candlestick going to be a big red candlestick, or is it going to be able to hold and continue the momentum? That's what I was looking out for. So we did see it start to pull back a bit, but as it broke above the resistance, I added, right, and I was pretty much just doing that, headed all of these candlesticks, right? That's what I was pretty much doing, heading into this area here. And so as it became overextended and peaked out, what ended up happening? We started to see some red candles, and so I started to give back profit here, and this thing started to trade sideways, right? So it was no longer uptrending. We saw this thing start to sell off, and as it would start to push back up, I would buy back into TQQQ, thinking we were going to break resistance and continue to go on the day, but that's not what happened, right? As you guys can see, this thing would pull on back. I would have to cut, my loss there. Small losses, but still they were eating away at my profits. And as it would start to push up again, I would buy back in, getting excited, but as it would pull on back, I would just be giving back profit, right? And so it was frustrating to me because we had very clear direction right at market open, but once, the resistance started to form, we started to trade sideways. And once we trade sideways, well, direction isn't very clear anymore. So I was just giving back my profit for the most part. And once I saw this thing break below the EMA and break these support levels, it made me want to re-enter SQQQ. So I was able to, make some profit on these candlesticks, but once again, it changed direction. And these direction changes, as you guys know, is what I struggle with the most, right? Knowing when to cut a trade and when to, just not be in a trade at all. So it makes sense around this area for me to get into TQQQ, given the momentum. But once it starts to, really struggle to break above this resistance area, what that could indicate to me is that, it may not be the best time to be buying into a stock around this area because it's still deciding whether it wants to go up or down, right? So there is no clear direction. Once it sold off and I got into SQQQ and it changed direction again, right? Same thing I was looking out for. Once this thing, started to approach these previous resistance levels, I was looking for whether this thing was gonna, start to break out and break above these resistance levels, or if we were gonna yet again get rejected. And as you guys can see, right, we ended up getting rejected yet again. And so I would be buying into SQQQ as it broke below the EMA. But these changes in direction, they kept getting me today, and it was pretty frustrating. But ultimately, that's just what comes with trading, right? It's not going to be clear and cookie cutter all the time. And so I was just struggling in terms of, identifying true direction. And so actual, more movement and momentum didn't end up entering the market until this area, right? So right around 7:30 is when this thing finally started to sell off below the EMA and, break above these previous support levels. So once it broke above these support levels, I started to enter SQQQ again, right? And same strategy. I would pretty much, be adding as this thing would fall. I would be cutting, my majority of my shares where I thought this thing could potentially bounce, right? And then I would wait for the next candle to form. And I would, see, is this candle going to end up, entering the green and forming a green candle, or are the red candles going to continue? So, once I would see this and get rejected and not break above where it was before, and start to sell off, that's what would give me that confirmation to get back into SQQQ, right? So I would be making money on the way down, and these little changes in direction would cause me to give back profit, but not too much, right? And so I was literally just rinsing and repeating that exact same strategy. Riding the red candles down. Once there's a green candle that engulfs the red one, I would just cut my SQQQ trade and wait for this thing to continue to sell off before buying back in, right? And something that definitely really helps me out is looking at these slightly bigger time frames, because what you'll notice is, for example, on the 5-day, 5-minute, this was showing the candlesticks constantly being red, right, and forming these lower lows and lower highs. But if you see this on the 1-day, 1-minute, right, you'll notice that there were green candlesticks on the way down, but the 5-day, 5-minute didn't show any, right? And so what that, pretty much helps me out with is knowing where true direction is headed. Yeah, this thing can have these little bounces, but looking at those bigger time frames allows me to see, although this thing is having these nice few green candles, it may not, continue to last because of the fact that on the bigger time frame, it's still forming these red candles, right? So that's ultimately what I was paying attention to. And as this thing would continue to sell off, I would be going with the flow and on SQQQ, right? And I didn't stop trading until right around this area. So I was riding these candlesticks down. I wasn't even in fully, right? If I was in fully, I would have made a killing today. I was only in with 25% for the most part because of the fact that this thing had so many, constant direction changes on the day that I wasn't, looking to, risk it for the biscuit today necessarily because of all the choppiness that we were experiencing earlier on. So as this thing continued to sell off, I would be in SQQQ, not with a heavy amount, but with an amount that, I still felt like I was capitalizing on it. And so right around this area, I just decided to cut it because of the fact that I hit my daily goal, and given how much I was struggling in the morning, I was just fine with walking away at that point. And what did we end up seeing? This thing continued to sell off. I ended up finding a support rally to middle VWAP before it continued to sell off for the remainder of the day, right? So there was definitely still money to be made, but I was just wanted to walk away and call it, because I did hit my daily goal and I didn't want to overstay my welcome in the market, right? But in terms of where the Nasdaq's at, right, we're obviously seeing lots of selling pressure. And so anytime it would break above the EMA, it would have this very aggressive sell-off, right? We broke above the EMA, and now we're having this aggressive sell-off, right? We're forming these lower lows and these lower highs. So definitely not good news for the market as a whole, but we are approaching these previous support levels, right? So we just need to see, are we going to end up, breaking these support levels and selling off even more, or are we going to potentially bounce here, right? And try to recover a bit. But we just need to take it day by day and to wait and see what happens. But that's pretty much everything I wanted to cover in today's video. I do appreciate you guys for tuning on in, and I do appreciate your time. But that's pretty much everything. If you guys have any questions at all, want me to break down any stock or stock indicator, go ahead and drop a comment and I will be more than happy to do that myself. But other than that, I will be posting a recap tomorrow, so I hope to see you guys then. Take care and have a good rest of your day.